Right now, you are surrounded by emptiness so extreme that your mind edits it out. The room feels solid, the air feels present, the world feels busy and close. But step back far enough, and the honest picture changes. The universe is not full, it is mostly space. If you could rise above Earth and keep moving outward, you would not find a crowded roadway of planets and stars. You would find distance, long and quiet and unforgiving. Distance that turns continents into color, then into a dot, then into a memory. Distance that makes even familiar objects feel unreachable, not because they are hidden, but because they are separated by enormous gaps of nothing. We grow up with diagrams of the solar system that look neat and comfortable. A bright sun in the center, a few planets placed like stepping stones. Earth here, Mars there, Jupiter beyond the asteroid belt. These drawings make the solar system feel like a small neighborhood. They make it feel as if you could travel between worlds with enough time and determination. The diagrams are useful for learning the order of planets, but they are not honest about scale. They cannot be honest because true scale breaks the page. If you draw the planets large enough to see, the distances become false. If you draw the distances accurately, the planets vanish into invisibility. This is not a mistake. It is a limitation of human perception. We are not built to feel what hundreds of millions of miles actually means. Here is a way to make it feel real without turning it into math. Imagine the sun as a basketball placed at the center of a large open field. Not a stadium packed with seats, just a quiet field with empty air stretching in every direction. At this scale, Earth is not a visible globe. It is closer to a grain of sand, something you could lose between your fingertips. It would be far from the basketball, so far that the basketball no longer feels like the center of a tidy system, but like a lonely object in a huge space. Now imagine Jupiter in the same model. Jupiter is the giant, the planet with enough mass to reshape the architecture of the solar system. In a textbook picture, Jupiter sits only a little farther out. In the honest model, Jupiter is not a short walk away. It is far enough that you stop thinking in steps and start thinking in silence. You would need more land than your eyes want to accept, just to place one more marble in the right position. Most people expect the solar system to look like a collection of things. At true scale, it looks like a collection of almost nothing. This matters because emptiness is not just background. It is a physical environment. It shapes travel. It shapes communication. It shapes what is possible. It shapes how long it takes for a message to cross the void. It even shapes what a journey means, because in space you do not move through scenery. You move through absence. Even light, the fastest thing nature allows, does not make space feel small. When sunlight leaves the surface of the sun, it does not arrive instantly. It takes time. That warmth on your skin is a delayed message. The light in your eyes is a record of where the sun was minutes ago. That delay grows quickly as you move outward, and it turns distance into something you can feel. The farther you look, the farther back in time you are seeing. Space is so open and so empty that even the speed of light must spend minutes, then hours, then years, simply crossing the gaps. And the gaps between planets, as large as they are only the shallow end of the ocean. If you drift outward past the orbit of Neptune, past the last bright planets, past the region where sunlight still feels strong, the solar system begins to shrink behind you. The sun becomes a brilliant point. The planets become unimportant. Ahead of you is darkness that does not feel dramatic. It feels quiet. It feels endless. You could travel for months and pass nothing of significance. You could travel for years and still be inside the influence of the sun, still inside its faint gravitational reach, still within the borders of our local island of matter. Then comes the next idea, the one that truly stretches the mind. The nearest star is not nearby. It is not the next step outward. It is separated from us by an ocean so wide that ordinary numbers stop being helpful. We call that gulf a light year. A light year is not time. It is distance. It is how far light travels in 1 year. We use it because miles and kilometers become too small to carry meaning at this scale. Your brain does not naturally feel the difference between 1 million and 1 billion. Both simply register as large. So we measure the universe with the fastest ruler we have, the speed of light, because it is the only ruler long enough to matter. Light can circle Earth multiple times in a single second. Light crosses the gap from the moon in just over a second. Light crosses the gap from the sun to Earth in minutes. It is the fastest motion built into the structure of reality. And still, light needs more than 4 years to reach the nearest star. 4 years for light, not for a spacecraft, not for a signal sent through a slow antenna. For light itself. That is how empty the space between stars truly is. This is why the night sky feels like a contradiction. It looks crowded with points of light, yet those points are separated by enormous volumes where almost nothing exists. The sky feels full because our eyes compress distance into a flat dome. A star that is a few light years away and a star that is a few thousand light years away both arrive as the same kind of tiny point. Your mind places them on the same surface, as if they are pinned to a single layer of darkness. But they are not. They are scattered through a three-dimensional ocean of space so vast that the stars are not the dominant feature. The emptiness is. Once you accept that, a different kind of calm begins to appear. The universe is not a crowded room. It is not a busy city. It is more like a quiet sea at night, with rare lights floating far apart. The space between those lights is not wasted space. It is the main substance of the cosmos. The matter is the exception. The emptiness is the rule. And the strange part is that this emptiness is not meaningless. It is not nothing in the simple sense. It has structure, it has temperature, it carries radiation, it allows fields to stretch across it. It gives gravity room to work. It gives time room to unfold. The universe uses emptiness as its stage, and almost everything that happens across that stage. So for the rest of this journey, we will not treat space as a blank backdrop. We will treat it as the main character. We will build a feeling for scale without rushing, without overwhelming numbers, and without turning the story into a lecture. We will let your imagination drift outward, slowly, into the quiet truth that space is mostly empty, and that emptiness is what makes the universe feel so vast, so patient, and so strangely peaceful. The reason space feels small is simple. Your eyes were never designed to measure the universe. They were designed to help you survive in a world where the farthest important thing was the next hill, the next river, the next storm. In that world, distance had texture. You could walk it. You could feel it in your legs. You could see it change from day to day. The brain is good at distances you can cross. It is not good at distances you can only describe. So when we look up, we compress everything. We flatten the sky into a dome. We turn depth into decoration. Stars become points. Planets become bright beads. The universe becomes a picture. And pictures are always smaller than the real thing. This is why scale comparisons matter, not because they are clever, but because they force the mind to stop pretending it understands. They give your imagination a frame it can actually hold. Start close. Start with the Earth you live on. The Earth is about 8,000 miles across. That number is already large enough to feel abstract, but at least it belongs to a world you can picture. You can imagine a plane circling the globe. You can imagine the slow curve of the horizon. You can imagine the feeling of being on a sphere without ever seeing it from space. Now step outward to the moon. The moon is not far in the cosmic sense, but it is far in the human sense. If you were driving a car at highway speed, you would need weeks of uninterrupted driving to reach it. And the strange part is that, in space terms, the moon is practically in your backyard. Between Earth and the moon, you could fit every planet in the solar system lined up side by side, not with space to spare, but with room. That fact alone begins to loosen the grip of intuition. The moon looks close. The moon feels like it hangs right above us. But the gap is wide enough to swallow worlds. Keep going outward. The sun is not a little farther. The sun is a different category of distance. Light takes a little over 8 minutes to reach Earth from the sun. That means that every sunrise is not happening now. It is a delayed arrival. Every warm afternoon is a message that left the sun while you were doing something else. 8 minutes does not sound like much until you remember what it means. You're not waiting for traffic. You're waiting for light. Now imagine this. If the sun could vanish instantly, you would not know right away. The sky would stay bright. The day would continue. For more than 8 minutes, everything would look normal. You would drink water, check your phone, breathe, blink, and the sunlight would still be arriving because it left before the change. Then, suddenly, the light would stop. Not gradually, not like a sunset. Just gone. That is what distance does. It separates cause from effect. It turns reality into a delayed broadcast. And this is still only the inner part of the solar system, the region that feels familiar because it includes us. Beyond Mars, there is a place many people imagine as a dangerous belt of rocks. The asteroid belt is often pictured like a dense field of tumbling boulders, the kind of thing a spaceship must weave through carefully. The real asteroid belt is mostly empty, too. The objects are spread so far apart that you would be unlikely to see anything at all. A spacecraft can cross the asteroid belt without dodging. The drama is not in the rocks. The drama is in the void between them. Then comes Jupiter, the first world that truly begins to stretch the sense of travel time into something uncomfortable. Jupiter is bright in our sky. It looks like a calm wandering star. But it is so far away that the number is hard to hold. Hundreds of millions of miles. The exact value changes because both planets move, but the fact remains. Jupiter is not just far. Jupiter is far in a way that rewires what the word far is supposed to mean. Light does not cross that gap instantly either. When Jupiter is relatively close, the light travel time is on the order of tens of minutes. When it is farther, it can be closer to an hour. That means that when you look at Jupiter through a telescope, you are watching a planet that is not exactly in the moment you think it is. You are seeing a recent version of Jupiter, delayed by the gap. This delay is calm and gentle, but it matters. It means reality does not arrive all at once. It arrives in waves, depending on distance. The universe is full of places that are always slightly out of sync with each other, not because anything is wrong, but because space is big enough to make even light slow. Now consider travel. A spacecraft is not light. A spacecraft is a slow, fragile, careful thing. It cannot take a straight line and simply go. It has to negotiate gravity. It has to follow curved paths that make sense in a system dominated by the sun. It has to carry fuel, and fuel has mass, and mass is expensive to push. This is why space travel feels strange when you first learn the truth. Not because rockets are weak, but because the environment is enormous. A mission to Jupiter is measured in years, not because engineers are lazy, but because the solar system is mostly distance. And here is a quieter point that is easy to miss. In space, most of the journey is not action, it is waiting. A spacecraft does not fly through scenery. It coasts through darkness. It spends months, then years, in a kind of continuous night, making tiny corrections, sending faint signals back across widening emptiness. A journey like that teaches you something about our situation. We live in a small, warm pocket of closeness. Everything beyond it is spread thin. If you want to feel the true scale without numbers, try this instead. Imagine the solar system as a city at night. The sun is a single bright stadium light. The planets are grains of dust scattered across miles of dark highway. You could drive for a long time and see nothing, not because nothing exists, but because the distances are simply too large for objects to feel common. Most of the volume is empty. The emptiness is not an accident. It is how gravity builds stable orbits. It is how the sun holds the planets without swallowing them. It is how the solar system survives for billions of years without constant collisions. The space between worlds is what makes worlds possible, and once you accept that, the next step becomes even stranger because the solar system is only a tiny island inside a much larger ocean. The gap between planets is enormous, but the gap between stars is so much larger that it makes the solar system feel crowded by comparison. The nearest stars are not scattered just beyond the edge of the solar system. They are not waiting in the dark like the next houses on the same street. They are separated by distances so large that even the emptiness inside our own solar system starts to feel almost intimate. It is tempting to imagine the space between stars as a thin gap, a little more darkness, a little more travel time. But once you leave the last planets behind, you enter a kind of silence that lasts for years at the speed of our fastest machines. The solar system has a boundary, not a wall, but a gradual fading. The influence of the sun thins out. Sunlight becomes weaker. The solar wind becomes less dominant. The familiar shape of our neighborhood dissolves into the larger environment of the galaxy. And in that larger environment, stars are not clustered together like lanterns on a string. They are separated like isolated islands in an ocean. If you could float outward until the sun became just another star, you would notice something unsettling. Space does not get more interesting. It gets more empty. The darkness does not fill up with objects. It stretches. It opens. It becomes the main thing. This is the part that diagrams rarely show, not because it is secret, but because it is difficult to draw nothing. Our minds crave landmarks. We want to measure progress by passing things. We want travel to mean movement through a scene. But interstellar space is not like that. It is not a hallway with doors. It is not a road with towns. It is mostly a long, steady absence where the next meaningful object is unimaginably far away. Even the idea of speed changes here. Inside the solar system, you can imagine a spacecraft as something that is moving fast. It leaves Earth, it crosses orbits, it reaches other planets. There are milestones, there are targets. Between the stars, speed becomes a slower kind of word. Not because the ship would slow down, but because the distance grows faster than your instincts can follow. You can be moving at a velocity that would feel impossible on Earth and still make almost no progress against the gulf ahead. This is why humans invented a new kind of measurement for deep space, not because it is dramatic, but because it is necessary. When distances become too large for everyday units to carry meaning, we switch to distances that are built around light itself. Light is the fastest thing the universe allows. It does not get tired. It does not run out of fuel. It does not have to fight gravity with rockets. It simply moves through space at a constant cosmic limit. And even with that advantage, light needs years to reach the nearest star. Years for light means something very specific. It means that space is not a small gap between objects. It is the dominant substance of the universe, the main volume where most of reality exists as separation. This is also why the sky looks like it does. When you look up at night, your eye sees a dense spread of points. It feels like there are stars everywhere. It feels like the universe is packed. But that feeling is created by the way your vision compresses depth into a flat surface. A star that is relatively close and a star that is far deeper into the galaxy can both appear as a tiny point of light, equally small, equally sharp. Your mind places them on the same dome. The sky becomes a ceiling. The stars become decorations on that ceiling. In reality, that ceiling does not exist. The stars are scattered throughout a vast three-dimensional region. They are layered at different distances, like lights suspended in a dark ocean, some near, some unimaginably far, and most separated by emptiness that is hard to imagine without letting your mind slow down. Now take another step outward, beyond the nearest stars. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, is not a tight cluster either. It is a disk of hundreds of billions of stars, but those stars still sit far apart. The galaxy looks bright in photographs because cameras collect light over time and compress the scene into a single image. A long exposure makes a thin spread of stars look like a glowing river. But even inside that river, space dominates. If you could travel through the Milky Way, you would not pass through a glittering crowd. You would pass through long stretches where nothing changes. The sky would slowly shift. Constellations would distort. A few stars would grow brighter. Most would remain distant. The darkness between them would remain the most stable feature of the view. The Milky Way contains gas and dust too, but even that material is thin. The romantic phrase is that space is empty, but the more accurate phrase is that space is almost empty. There are particles, there are atoms, there are faint fields and radiation. But compared to any environment on Earth, the density is so low that it becomes a different kind of substance entirely. A cloud in interstellar space can be enormous and still be thinner than the best vacuum humans can create in a lab. That sounds impossible until you remember what a vacuum really is. It is not a magical nothing, it is simply a place where matter is rare. In deep space, matter is rare on a level your daily experience never prepares you for. And yet, even rare matter matters. Over long times, gravity collects it. It pulls it into streams, it gathers it into clouds, it collapses it into new stars. It recycles it through supernova explosions. It spreads it out again and then gathers it again, like slow breathing on a scale that can last millions of years. This is one of the most calming truths in astronomy. The universe is not in a hurry. The emptiness gives it room to be patient. It gives it room to unfold gradually, to build structures without chaos, to let light travel for years and still arrive, to let galaxies form without needing constant contact. Now widen the view again, beyond the Milky Way. The Milky Way is not alone, but it is not pressed against its neighbors either. Galaxies are separated by huge stretches of intergalactic space, where the density of matter drops even further. The space between galaxies is quieter than the space between stars, and the space between stars is quieter than anything we ever experience on Earth. This is where the idea of emptiness becomes almost complete. You can travel through intergalactic space and find almost no atoms at all, just thin traces, faint radiation, and the slow curvature of gravity spread across an enormous scale. And yet, when you look at deep images of the cosmos, you see countless galaxies. Again, the illusion returns. It looks crowded, it looks full. But that crowd is an image. It is a slice of reality gathered into a rectangle. Those galaxies are not shoulder to shoulder. They are separated by distances so large that the light leaving one galaxy can travel for millions of years before it reaches another. The universe looks like a city when we photograph it. In 3 dimensions, it is more like a sea at night, with rare lights separated by vast calm water. This is not just poetic, it changes the meaning of observation itself. When you look far away, you're not simply seeing far. You are seeing long ago. Light does not carry a timestamp, but it does carry a delay. The farther the distance, the older the image. A distant galaxy is not just far in space, it is far in time. So the emptiness between objects becomes more than a gap. It becomes a time machine. It means the universe is not presented to you all at once. It is layered with different distances showing different eras. Near objects show the recent universe. Far objects show an older universe. And the emptiness between them is what creates that layered view. This is why the cosmos can feel so peaceful when you let it. The darkness is not a threat. It is the medium that makes everything else possible. It is the reason light can travel. It is the reason information can cross the universe. It is the reason we can look up and see both the present and the ancient past in the same quiet sky. And the strangest part is that this emptiness is not simply empty. It has structure, it has rules, it has energy, it can bend, it can stretch, it can ripple. Space is not a passive stage. It participates. Space looks empty because your eyes can only see light and matter that is thick enough to shine. But emptiness is not a simple absence. It has layers, it has leftovers. It has a kind of quiet content that is everywhere, even when nothing obvious is there. If you could drift into the darkest region between galaxies, far from stars, far from warm dust clouds, far from anything that looks like a destination, you would still not be in true nothingness. You would be inside a medium that carries faint signals from the universe itself. The most ancient of those signals is a soft glow that fills all of space in every direction. It is not bright. It is not visible to your eyes. It is a background hum, a leftover warmth from the early universe, stretched thin by expansion and cooled down over billions of years. It surrounds you like an invisible ocean of photons. Even in the deepest dark, that ancient light is still there, moving through the void, quietly reminding you that space has a memory. The emptiness also has temperature, even when it feels like it should be absolute cold. Temperature in space does not behave like temperature on Earth. On Earth, air carries heat. Surfaces exchange warmth quickly. In deep space, there is no air to hold heat for you. Objects cool mostly by radiating energy away. That means a drifting rock can become extremely cold, while the space around it still contains that faint background glow. The void is not a perfect freezer. It is a thin bath of ancient radiation and rare particles, more subtle than any environment we experience in daily life. And then there is the matter you do not see. Even when space looks empty, gravity says otherwise. Galaxies rotate too fast for their visible mass. Clusters hold together more strongly than luminous matter should allow. Light from distant galaxies bends around invisible structures as if it is passing through a landscape made of unseen weight. This is where the universe becomes quietly strange. There appears to be matter that does not shine, does not glow, does not reflect. It does not make pictures. It makes gravity. You can think of it as a hidden scaffolding, a dark framework that galaxies sit inside, like lanterns hung on an invisible web. This unseen mass does not fill space evenly. It gathers. It forms filaments. It creates the large-scale structure of the cosmos, a cosmic network where the bright galaxies are just the visible beads on something much larger. On the biggest scales, the universe is not random. It is patterned, not in a neat geometric way, but in a web-like way, with dense knots where clusters form and long strands connecting them, and wide regions in between where there is very little. Those wide regions are called voids. A void sounds like nothing. In reality, a cosmic void can be unimaginably large, tens of millions of light-years across, and still contain some galaxies, some thin gas, some trace matter. But compared to the filaments and clusters, it is emptier. It is quieter. It is one of the purest expressions of what the universe is mostly made of. And the voids are not rare accidents. They take up most of the volume of the universe. The cosmic web is like foam. The filaments are the edges. The clusters are the thick corners. The voids are the wide bubbles in between. So when you say the universe is mostly empty, that is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a structural fact. Most of the universe is made of places where almost nothing happens, at least not quickly. Places where you could drift for millions of years and see only subtle changes in the star field. Then comes another layer, even stranger, because it makes emptiness feel active rather than passive. Space itself is expanding. This is not the kind of motion you see in a room. It is not galaxies flying through space like sparks from an explosion. It is the distances between faraway galaxies increasing as the fabric of space stretches. The universe is not only large, it is becoming larger. And the expansion is not slowing down. On the biggest scales we can measure, the expansion appears to be accelerating. Something is causing the stretching to speed up over time, pushing galaxies apart more and more strongly as the universe ages. This is one of the most unsettling ideas in modern cosmology, and it can be told gently, because at human scales it changes nothing about your day. The atoms in your body do not expand, the Earth does not swell, the solar system stays bound. The Milky Way holds together. Gravity and electromagnetic forces keep local structures stable. But beyond the scale of galaxy groups and clusters, the universe is opening wider. The long distances get longer. The voids get wider. The future becomes more separated. If you imagine the cosmos as a quiet sea at night, expansion is the slow rising of the tide, spreading the lights farther apart, widening the dark water between them. This is where emptiness stops being just space between things and becomes a driver of the story. The universe is not simply a collection of objects floating in a neutral background. The background is doing something. It is changing. And that changes what time means, because a universe that keeps stretching will eventually make the night sky look different in a deep way. Over immense spans of time, distant galaxies will drift beyond a horizon where their light can no longer reach us. Not because they vanish, but because the space between us and them grows faster than their light can cross. The sky will become quieter. Not soon, not within human history. But in the far future, the visible universe will shrink, not because the universe becomes smaller, but because the observable part becomes more isolated. In a strange way, expansion makes emptiness more powerful. It turns distance into destiny. And yet, even this is not the end of the calm. Because when you bring the scale back down to the level of a single human life, the universe is not rushing away from you. It is simply large. It is simply patient. It is simply doing what it has always done on cosmic time, unfolding slowly, stretching slowly, letting light travel across the dark for years and still arrive. Emptiness is not a void where nothing exists. It is the main environment of the cosmos, filled with faint ancient light, threaded by invisible gravity, shaped into vast quiet voids, and slowly expanding in a way that gives the universe its long future. Space is mostly empty, but it is not nothing. It is a kind of quiet substance that holds everything apart, holds everything together, and gives the universe room to be vast. If the universe were crowded, it would be loud. Not loud with sound because sound needs air, and space has almost none. Loud with collisions, loud with constant interactions, loud with chaos. Objects would crash into each other. Orbits would not remain stable for long. The sky would be violent and short-lived. The fact that the universe is mostly empty is the reason it can be stable. It is the reason planets can orbit for billions of years without crashing into the sun. It is the reason galaxies can rotate and evolve without instantly tearing themselves apart. It is the reason light can travel across unimaginable distances and still arrive. Emptiness is not an accident. It is part of what makes a long-lasting universe possible. And once you let that idea settle, something subtle happens inside the mind. The night sky stops feeling like a ceiling and starts feeling like depth. The stars stop feeling like decorations and start feeling like distant islands. The darkness between them stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like scale. Most of reality is separation. That sounds lonely until you realize what separation creates. It creates room. It creates quiet. It creates the possibility that things can exist without being instantly destroyed by constant contact. It creates time. The universe does not rush because it does not need to. The distances enforce patience. They stretch every process into something long and gradual. A star can burn for billions of years because it is not constantly being disturbed. A planet can develop a stable climate because its orbit is not constantly being shattered. Life on Earth can evolve slowly because the solar system is not a crowded battlefield. Even our ability to learn depends on emptiness. When we look up, we are not just looking outward, we are looking backward in time. The light arriving from a distant galaxy carries a record of what that galaxy looked like long ago. The emptiness is what makes that delay possible. The void turns the sky into a timeline. In one direction, you see the recent universe. In another, you see an older universe. Farther still, you see closer to the beginning. The darkness between those images is not a gap. It is the travel time. It is the reason the universe can show you its history without ever moving you from where you are. And there is another quiet truth hidden inside this. The emptiness is what connects you to everything else, because it is the medium that allows information to travel. Light, radio signals, gravity waves, even the gentle pull of gravity itself, all move across that vast openness. Space does not block connection. It makes connection possible, but it makes it slow. This slow connection is the reason our place in the cosmos feels both intimate and distant at the same time. You are not far from the sun in a spiritual sense. You are tightly bound to it by gravity. You and the sun are part of the same structure, the same orbiting system, the same long dance. You are not far from Jupiter in the sense that your solar system is one family, but you are far in the sense that the distances are large enough to make travel into a multi-year silence. The universe holds contradictions like this effortlessly. It gives you a night sky full of light and a reality full of emptiness. It gives you a feeling of closeness and a truth of vast separation. And if you bring the scale even closer, back down to your own body, the story becomes almost personal. The atoms in you were built in ancient stars, elements formed in the deep interiors of suns, heavier elements formed in the explosions and collisions that end stellar lives. Those atoms were scattered into space, into emptiness, and over immense time they gathered again, pulled by gravity, folded into clouds, formed into new stars, new planets, and eventually into you. That means you are not separate from the cosmos. You are made from it. The emptiness between the stars did not prevent your existence. It was part of the process that allowed the universe to mix and recycle its material. It gave the debris room to spread. It gave gravity room to gather. It gave time room to turn scattered atoms into a living world. So when you lie awake and think about the universe, it does not have to feel cold. The scale can be comforting instead of frightening, because it tells you that the universe is not a place of constant threat. It is a place of long, quiet spans where change happens slowly. It is a place where most of the time nothing dramatic happens, and that is exactly why something as delicate as life can exist at all. The darkness is not an enemy. It is the space that makes everything else possible. If you ever feel overwhelmed by the noise of daily life, remember the honest shape of reality. Outside this thin atmosphere, outside this warm pocket of air and sound, the universe is mostly still, mostly quiet, mostly empty space stretching in every direction. And yet it is not meaningless. It is filled with faint ancient light. It is threaded with invisible structure. It is expanding. It is carrying the past to your eyes. You are resting on a small world, orbiting a star, inside a galaxy, inside a web of galaxies, floating in a universe that is mostly empty and still somehow full of story. Let that be calming. Not because it makes you small, but because it reminds you that the cosmos is patient. The night is wide. The distances are real. And in the middle of all that vast, quiet space, you are here, safe, breathing slowly, while the universe continues its gentle unfolding around you. If this calm journey through the universe helped you unwind tonight, tap like and subscribe for more slow, sleep-friendly space documentaries from Nocturnal Space, and sleep well.